NATO has said that Ukraine will one day become a member of the Collective Defense Pact, but that can't happen as long as there is a war raging on its territory. Now, one prominent voice has floated the idea of making Kyiv a member, but without areas under Russian occupation. But would allies even consider taking on a new member with a built-in conflict with Moscow? DW's Teri Schultz reports.
Could Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky get his wish of joining NATO now? Former NATO chief Anders Fogh Rasmussen is promoting an idea that has rarely been raised in public before, offering Ukraine NATO membership without regaining Crimea, Donbass, and the other territories Moscow has illegally seized. Rasmussen argues that NATO's collective security guarantee, Article 5, would then deter further Russian expansion. But even some leaders who advocate Ukraine's rapid NATO accession say this formula would be a Kremlin victory.
I mean, territorial integrity is something, that has to be sacrosanct. And giving away something for something, it should not be, it should not work like this.
Ukrainian parliamentarian Andriy Osadchuk says it's a non-starter for Kyiv.
Vladimir Putin, till today, has big dream to destroy Ukraine as independent country. Any ceasefire, any freezing of the conflict, any compromise with evil, just give a time for Russia to reload.
The last time a similar idea emerged from the realm of rumors was in August, when Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg's chief of staff, Sten Jensen, suggested at a forum in Norway that Ukraine giving up some Russian-occupied land may be a path to peace. This caused an immediate uproar, forcing Stoltenberg to clarify that NATO's position supporting Ukraine's territorial integrity had not changed. Jensen had to say he'd misspoken. But defense analyst Edward Hunter Christie says real mistakes are being made.
There is a gap between official positions, which express the ideal outcome of Ukraine recovering its entire territory, and the actual level of aid, of military aid in particular, that allies are prepared to give. They need the full range of tools so that they have a real chance of changing facts on the ground, and then we can see where diplomacy leads.
He says while NATO could bring the free part of Ukraine into the alliance now, that would weaken both of them.
Our commitment is to restore the full territory of Ukraine, and strategically and militarily and legally and for the international reputation and prestige of the alliance, we need to go all the way with this.
But all the way is so far away that Kyiv and its supporters fear weapons deliveries will dry up too soon, forcing President Zelensky to consider options like the Rasmussen proposal to give up pieces of his country and call it peace.
And I'd like to go back to Ukraine now and its prospects for NATO membership. I'm joined by Fabrice Pothier. He is a political expert and the CEO of Rasmussen Global consultancy, which has worked in and with Ukraine. He is also a former NATO director of policy planning. Welcome to the program, and thank you so much for joining us. We had heard a little bit earlier about the program, about this proposal from former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who floated the idea of Ukraine essentially giving up some of its territory or claims to it in exchange for NATO membership. Tell us a little bit more about the proposal, its potential, and whether it might be a way to end the war in Ukraine.
Well, first I have to correct you. This is not about swapping territory for membership. It's about saying that Ukraine, the whole of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, should become a NATO member. But the way Article 5, which is the collective defense clause of NATO, applies to Ukraine whilst Ukraine is still at war, effectively against Russia, that Article 5 should apply to the non-occupied part of Ukraine, so that basically NATO membership becomes a possibility. So this is about giving an interim solution to the long objective of full membership for Ukraine. And why? I think the context is important. First, obviously, what matters in the day-to-day struggle is to provide as many weapons as quickly as possible so that the Ukrainian armed forces can fight the fight and can have a fair chance at basically retaking as much of the occupied territories as possible. But what we have seen is that every time, and this is especially the case in Berlin, we have been late, sometimes 6 months late, from what the Ukraine armed forces need to actually be successful. And the quantity has also been missing. As we know, artillery-wise, there's going to be an increasing, growing gap between what Ukraine has in terms of stockpile and what the Russians have, also thanks to their dark deals with the North Koreans. So weapon supply is the day-to-day support we need to give to Ukraine, but it's not enough to actually make Ukraine fully successful. And this is where the political commitment towards Ukraine is super important. And it's twofold. It's EU membership, and this is hopefully going to be a positive green light in December when the European heads of states will invite Ukraine, and it's also NATO membership. And I think NATO membership is the real game changer.
And tell us, a little bit more about something that you did mention there, which is very much on the minds of many, especially, in NATO and Ukraine, indeed. Military donor fatigue seems to be a real thing, especially with the war raging right now in Gaza. If your proposal remains just that, if they do not decide to take you up on that idea, do you think that NATO has alternative plans to support its partner Ukraine and to bring this war to an end? What's on the table right now?
But I think military donor fatigue is a bit of a shortcut. I think we still have a lot of capacity. It's just that politically we have been holding back, both Berlin but also Washington. And obviously, Washington is in the middle of a difficult moment in terms of the lack of bipartisan consensus on certain things, including Ukraine. But in Europe has been contributing more than half of the support to Ukraine, including military support. And I think Germany still has some capacity to go to help the Ukrainians. So it's not just fatigue. I think it's political commitment. And we have the industrial might to actually outdo Russia. But again, we have to have the political commitment and to deliver on what we promise. So I do think that we have what it takes for Ukraine to have enough and to succeed. But again, I think the only way fundamentally to stop Vladimir Putin is not just going to be tanks and F-16, it's going to be NATO membership. This is going to be the wall that he will not dare crossing because he has never dared crossing the Article 5 wall.
Thank you so much for joining us to share that view. Fabrice Pothier, as you mentioned, CEO of Rasmussen Global, political analyst and former NATO Director of Policy Planning. We appreciate it.